Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, May 22nd, 2021, and today I'm going to be talking about the state of Georgia with now yet again another ballot audit in Fulton County, a state that has a large number of voters. We're talking about nearly 5 million voters in the 2020 election, with a large amount of those voters located in Fulton County, which contains the city of Atlanta. Now, if you're looking at Fulton County from face value, you'd understand that this is a very Democratic area. This is one of the Democratic epicenters of the state. But it wasn't always as partisan towards the left wing over the past couple of elections. The reason why the Republicans may not necessarily understand why they're losing in counties such as Fulton County by such a large amount is mainly because I feel like they haven't realized they've lost a significant amount of voters amongst the white suburban area. The Republican Party has never relied in the 21st century on urban voters to win them elections. What they've relied on is decreased amounts of urban voters and white voters to push them across the finish line every single time. But that was not the case in Georgia. We saw a shift in support amongst minority voters actually towards the right wing, but it was counteracted by an even more tremendous shift. It wasn't as large in terms of percentages, but because white voters do make up a very significant portion of the population, they drove the state ultimately towards the left. And we saw a lot of that in Fulton County, and I think it's something that the Republican Party hasn't necessarily wrapped their heads around, that they're losing in a county that, yes, they have lost before, and they have lost under previous Republicans who have won the state of Georgia, sometimes by large margins, but I don't think they fully understand how much support they actually lost, especially in a state such as Georgia, when the last time it went to a Democrat was in 1992. So what is this audit doing? Why is this audit in discussion? And what does this mean for the future of the GOP? Well, this audit essentially is going to be looking for fraud. It's going to be looking for evidence that the election was rigged. And this comes as a judge allows these absentee ballots to be unsealed, to be checked over and, reviewed to see if there was any type of mishap or there was some type of tampering with the election. Whatever it might be, essentially, this is yet again another strategy to try to relitigate the 2020 election results in the state of Georgia, something that has been settled what will be now four times is going, further into taxpayer dollars and going into this audit. All around, it's just a very negative thing for democracy. It's a very negative thing that we are at a point where we are counting the ballots yet again a fourth time, all to appease one subsection of the Republican Party. All to appease the extremists on the, I would say, GOP side that believe to this day that the election in Georgia was stolen from them, especially in Fulton County. And this judge is allowing it. So can this absentee ballot, unsealing, recount, audit, whatever you want to call it, can this overturn the election results? Can this make Joe Biden the loser in Georgia? The answer is no. This does not give them reign to do that. This is not a state-mandated recount effort. This is a ballot audit that is allowed to occur in Fulton County. This was not required by Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, nor was it requested by the Trump campaign or the Biden campaign. So when I had mentioned that this had been counted 3 times already, this will move on to the 4th time. Well, in the 2020 election, I don't know if you guys entirely remember, but I covered it here on my channel where we talked about the electoral certification. And in certain states where the margin is decided by 0.5%, the state must mandate a recount effort. So, in Georgia, the first count, of course, was the regular election. The first one was allowing the ballots to be counted on a statewide level. Then we found out Joe Biden won the state by 0.23%. So as a result, Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State who was elected back in 2018, says, I'm going to go ahead and recount the state because it's under 0.5%, which means I must recount the ballots / audit them, retabulate the numbers. So that got certified. And then, because it was decided by 0.5% or less, the Trump campaign is allowed, or the losing campaign or the winning campaign, you are allowed to formally request a recount effort on behalf of the state. And they're allowed to do it. Because it was decided by such a narrow margin to ensure confidence in our democracy, you are allowed to do it. So that brings us to December 7th, 2020. And that's when we find out that the election results have been counted for yet again a 3rd time, and they have been certified and the numbers haven't changed. Well, months later, it's May of 2021. Biden was inaugurated months ago. The first 100 days have already passed. And yet, for some reason, we are still discussing the election results of an election that happened half a year ago. So this is our 4th time going to count these ballots. This is our fourth time going to look at the 2020 election, and MSNBC put in the headline that this will confirm Biden's win for the fourth time, because there is no expectation that there is voter fraud, because there was no proof of it in the first place. President Trump started these baseless claims of election fraud and then used it to attack the incumbent Republican governor. Brian Kemp, someone who campaigned with President Trump, campaigned alongside him back in 2018 as the Secretary of State of Georgia before he was elected. Brian Kemp was, as pro-Trump as anyone can get. Even after President Trump berated and vilified him, Brian Kemp traveled to Washington, D.C. to attend a Christmas party at the White House. So Brian Kemp, if anyone, is caught in this web of President Trump, willing to stick with him even after President Trump says he needs to resign. Who needs Democrats when Brian Kemp is in office? Those were Donald Trump's words. These are fighting words. This is President Trump saying, I hate Brian Kemp. And Brian Kemp turns around and says, I still love you, Mr. President. I still want to be a part of your future. And that's just the unfortunate reality for Brian Kemp, because now he is a negative viewed figure in the GOP. He's someone who is negatively approved of, and at the end of the day, or disapproved of, that's the better word for it, but at the end of the day, Brian Kemp is a Republican who is far from being a Republican in name only, one of the more conservative governors, I would say, across those deemed swing states, and yet he still has yet to remove himself from President Trump, even though President Trump is very clear that he does not like him. He called on him to resign, saying that he refuses to admit that we won Georgia, referring to the fact that President Trump supposedly won Georgia. Brian Kemp, as much as he did cling on to President Trump, could not undermine the will of 5 million voters in the state. He could not disenfranchise the 2.5 million that voted for Joe Biden. He couldn't tell them that their votes were invalid, even though President Trump was doing it. And as much as Brian Kemp might have wanted to, his conscience or pressure was keeping him from doing that. Because even if Brian Kemp technically wanted to say that the election was rigged, he couldn't overturn the election results himself. So looking at President Trump's claims against Brian Kemp, you see just how deep this goes into, to a point where someone who President Trump campaigned for in 2018 and campaigned alongside leading up to November, he turned on him in the name of baseless claims of election fraud. Going so far later into January, saying that he will campaign against him, saying that he will go ahead and endorse a Republican primary opponent, would campaign for that Republican primary opponent. Governor Doug Ducey in Arizona, President Trump has floated the idea of endorsing a Democrat before he would endorse Doug Ducey as a Republican nominee. And that Democrat would be Mark Kelly, someone who President Trump attacked time and time again. So President Trump is a petty man, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And what's happening here in Georgia, I think, is all to appease him, all to appease the Trump wing of the Republican Party that still believes that the election was rigged. And I also do want to point out that Fulton County, out of all of the counties, is targeted for a reason. Looking at the election results in Fulton County in 2020, let's take it for example. Joe Biden won 73% of the vote here in 2020. Donald Trump received just 26%. In 2018, the margin was a slight bit better for the GOP. Brian Kemp won 27% of the vote, and Stacey Abrams won 72% of the vote. But they hover around the same. 2016 was different. In 2016, Hillary Clinton received just 68% of the vote, a 5-point reduction. Donald Trump received 27% of the vote, a 1-point increase, which means a net loss for the Democrats in Fulton County by around 6 points. Then let's go down to 2012, an election where Mitt Romney won the state by 8 points, while Fulton County went to Barack Obama by a large margin. But Barack Obama only won this county with 64% of the vote. Mitt Romney won 35% of the vote. So in the span of 8 years, the amount of Republican support alone has been reduced by 9, and the amount of Democratic support has increased by 9. Can you see where it went from? Some of these were Romney voters that turned towards Biden. In addition, the sheer amount of people in Fulton County voting did considerably increase. In 2012, if you add up those numbers, you'll get somewhere around the high points of the 300,000s, but less than 400,000. 2016, a high turnout, not a high turnout. 2018, I'll show you in a second. A moderately okay turnout election, higher than 2012, not higher than 2012. Yes, it was higher than 2012, but Georgia, this area sees an increase in people, so that explains the population bump, but still, 400,000 plus votes in Fulton County. 2018, you're looking at a very similar amount of votes due to the amount of energy on the Democrat side in the 2018 election. In addition, Stacey Abrams won more votes than Hillary Clinton, so that makes sense given the fact that Fulton County did skew heavily towards the left. But Stacey Abrams set the bar very high. While she wasn't able to win, she brought a state that went to Donald Trump by 5-6 points in the 2016 election down to decided by just 1.4%. I mean, she did wonders. And to 2020, the Democratic Party did better. Instead of having less than 400,000 voters, or just 400,000 voters, Fulton County had over 500,000 voters. Over 500,000 voters out of the state came directly from Fulton County. And that's why it's the target for the audit. You're talking about a county that has seen a significant increase in population over the past 8 years, a county that saw a significant uptick in voter turnout over the past 8 years, and the margins got even worse for Republicans. Instead of losing by 29, Republicans are now losing by nearly 40, 50 points. I mean, the margin in 2012, 64 versus 35, you're looking at a difference here of 29%. I wasn't kidding. And now, you're looking at a super significant difference. You're looking at a difference of 47 points. 29 to 47, that certainly can explain why the state went from +9 for Romney to plus 0.23 for Biden. There were significant changes in Fulton County, and that's why it's being targeted. In addition, you're looking at a county that's right in the Atlanta metro area. You're looking at a county that holds Atlanta, a very large minority population. It's just a state that holds a lot of condensed population centers, and Atlanta so happens to be one of them. And it just so happens to be in Fulton County. Republicans are not questioning the validity of Gilmer County because it's a Republican county. They're questioning it because they can't understand how these voters turned away from them. But it's a continuation of audits that have propped up, ideas of them have popped up in a number of states and have already been underway in one other state. Arizona, Maricopa County. I'll show you. It's a very similar story. It's Maricopa County. It holds the city of Phoenix, a very large city. The majority of the voters come from Maricopa County. The majority of the voters do not come from Fulton County in Georgia. But again, population centers, and Arizona has a very big one amongst the Phoenix area. Maricopa County, a perfect example. In 2012, same exact thing that you can understand. Looking at Maricopa County, Mitt Romney won Maricopa County by double digits. You're talking about a victory of over 10 points here. Joe Biden, however, wins Maricopa County by 2.2%. So the shift was tremendous, and the sheer amount of voters in there versus 2012 was also super significant. Obama got just 500,000 votes in Maricopa County. Romney got around 700,000. Fast forward to 2020, Joe Biden receives over 1 million votes in Maricopa County, and Donald Trump is nearly there. So when I'm looking at Maricopa County and I'm looking at this audit, it reminds me a lot of what's happening now in Georgia. Because this audit we've covered before on my channel, but this is something new. This Georgia audit, this relitigation of the election results in Georgia is the start of a trend, at least from what I'm seeing, at least from what seems to be reported by the media and by the Republican Party. When they go to certain states and they say, I want to audit Maricopa County, I want to audit Fulton County to see if there was fraud. We've done this time and time and time again. Arizona was forcibly recounted. Georgia was forcibly recounted. You have other states that allowed the Trump campaign to request a recount, and sometimes they did, and they found the exact same election results. So to go back and say, I'm still looking for fraud in Georgia for a fourth time at the expense of the taxpayer, or even not, even if it was self-funded, I don't understand it. Because it comes down to a point where, yes, a traditional recount effort or the requested one as described by law, okay, that can confirm our understanding of democracy. That's because that recount effort occurred in December. The audit was immediately following the election. But to go back and say, I still believe the election was rigged. Let me audit it in May of the following year, 6 months after the 2020 election. Yeah, that's when it gets excessive. That's when it looks as if you're obsessing over an election and trying to prove to someone that the election was in fact rigged when there was no evidence of it. Because for a fourth time, they are going to find exactly what they knew from November 7th, 2020. That Joe Biden won the state of Georgia and that he won it fairly. And that's going to be the burner for the GOP here when they're looking at the election results amongst the audit and they find no evidence of fraud, exactly how they are finding nothing in Arizona. That's when it's going to prove very detrimental to them, because at this point, it's getting worse and worse and worse as time progresses and they continue and continue and continue to relitigate the 2020 election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post-2020 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.